guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another closer look video at a music box set. And tonight it's a special one for me because it's dear to my heart. It's one of my favorite artists, if not my favorite artist of all time, and it's a box set called Do You Know Me Now, and it's by David Sylvian. Now this is covering David's career from 2003 to 2014. He's been very quiet since then. There has been a couple of sort of releases, but they've been more like reissues of some of his albums and stuff that's not been sort of released. But we're going to be looking at this set today. I do have another box set called the Weather Box, which covers the first part of his solo career post Japan, and that's another great box set, but that's filed way, so I'm not digging that out for this video. So we will just be looking at this and the album releases that are in it. So let's not waste too much time. Let's get deep down and have a closer look at this David Sylvian box set. So here we are. This is the David Sylvian box set called Do You Know Me Now, released on his own label called Samad High Sound, which it says there on the label. This came out about a year or so ago, or maybe just over that, maybe 2 years ago, and it's covering his career from 2003 from 2014. Before that, there was another box set covering his first part of his career called the Weather Box. But then there's a part of the career which covers albums like Dead Bees on a Cake and some of his Robert Fripp albums, The First Day and things like that, that are not covered in any box set, which seems a little bit of a lost area, which I think that it would be really cool if they actually got down and did something to cover that area of David's career. Like I said, we got a box set of his career with the early part of his solo career, from Brilliant Trees, you know, all the way up to things like Alchemy and Secrets of the Beehive and all those wonderful albums that he did, Gone to Earth. And we had this one, but we don't have anything covering that part of his career, which is a shame. But fingers crossed, maybe something can be done with that. It's probably all going to be down to copyrights owned by the companies that own those albums. So let's have a little look at this box. It comes in this wonderful artwork, which is a great photograph. These are trees in a forest, as you can see, with all the sort of plants and the flowers and the plants blowing out up here, and these are multicolored barked trees, and it sort of replicates onto the other side. A different visual, but it is still very beautiful. Amazing looking box set, as you can see. So we'll take out the contents, and it's an amazing box, hardback, really solid, can't really bend it or anything, really hardback. So we'll pop that to one side, and here we have the contents inside the box, with once again some more beautiful artwork here of some dandelion flowers and all sorts of amazing plants there. This is a hardback book that comes with the box set, which we will get to in a minute. And these are the parts with the discs. Let me try and pop these right round the right way. Okay, these are the right way. This is the sticker that was on the front of the box. I do try to preserve anything that comes with things, and I managed to save the sticker. And this says on here 2000 to 2014, So Do You Know Me. It includes all the albums from that period on his Samad High Sound 10 CD box sets. So we have 10 albums. and we also had this disc, which is a replacement disc for disc 4. I don't know what the issue was, but I played disc 4 and I have no problems with it, and there's no missing tracks. But anyway, I've keep that with it, so we do have that. This first little booklet contains the albums Blemish, The Good Son versus the Overdaughters, which is the Blemish remixes. We have the 9 Horses album, Snowborn Sorrow, which I believe he rejoined some of his old Japan colleagues, including Steve Jansen. And then we have David Sylvian, Rishi Sakamoto and 9 Horses, Do You Know Me Now, the singles EP, which this is the replacement of there. So we're going to open the first little booklet so you can have a little look. It's set out like this, as you can see. There's Blemish, there's the Blemish remixes, the 9 Horses album, and the Sakamoto Sylvian 9 Horses singles EP in there, in this beautiful, wonderful sort of artwork. Absolutely glorious. So that is the first one. The second one contains a long one, Josh. This is the second one. It contains the albums When Loud Weather Buffered Narashima, Manafon, Died in the War, the Manafon variations, and When We Return You Won't Recognize Us. So that's the 4 albums in there. So we'll have a little look at these once again in a nice setup there. So we have When Loud Weather Buffered Narashima, Manafon, the Manafon remixes, and When We Return You Won't Recognize Us. So that is the albums in that set. And finally we have Yan Bang and Eric Horner's album Uncommon Deities, featuring David Sylvian, Sidsel Anderson and Avria Henriksen. And then we have David Sylvian's album There's a Light That Enters Houses with No Other House in Sight, featuring Franz Wright and Christian Fenez. And that's the 2 albums in there, which is nice there. This is one of those strange packagings which I'm not a fan of, because you have to sort of like try and get them out and put them in properly. I'm not a fan of this packaging. I would rather them with the plastic holders and you can put them on. But there's the 2 albums there, Uncommon Deities, and There Is Light Entering Houses with No Other House in Sight. And that is the 10 albums that are in this set, plus the replacement disc. Let's have a look at the booklet. Well, it's not the book, it's a hardback book. It's not really a booklet, is it? So this is an immense booklet. Really, really cool. Picture of David there. And there's an introduction by David Sylvian going through about the history of these recordings and the combination of the box set. And once again we have the listings of the albums. We have Adrian Slausensi, A Visual Object Can Never Be Expressed in Words. And then we're going into his albums. This is the album, let me grab my drink, guys, Blemish. Which I love. Now on here there's this album Blemish, and there's the Blemish remixes, which are not particularly, it's not really my cup of tea. But in the other album Manafon, the album was okay but the remixes are better. It's kind of strange, but there we go. Yeah, this is Blemish. This is a great album, great artwork. This came out in 2003. And here's the track listing for Blemish, which has Blemish, The Good Son, The Only Daughter, The Heart Knows Better, She Is Not, Late Night Shopping, How Little We Need to Be Happy, and A Fire in the Forest. and it just gives you a bit of production notes there, and that's a great picture there. Next up is The Good Son versus The Only Daughter, the Blemish remixes. This album contains the tracks The Only Daughter, remixed by Ryu Ikeda, Blemish, remixed by Bernd Friedman, The Heart Knows Better, remixed by Sweet Billy Pilgrim, A Fire in the Forest, remixed by Ready Made FC, The Good Son, remixed by Yushiro Hayano, Late Night Shopping, remixed by Bernd Friedman, How Little We Need to Be Happy, remixed by Tatsuya Asino, The Only Daughter, remixed by Yan Bang and Eric Honor, and we have the remix of Blemish by Akira Rabalash. And then we have The Only Daughter, remixed by Ryo Ikeda, Blemish, remixed by Bernd Friedman, The Heart Knows Better, remixed by Sweet Billy Pilgrim, A Fire in the Forest, remixed by Ready Made FC again, The Good Son, remixed by Yushiro Hanoi, Late Night Shopping, remixed by Bernd Friedman, and we have How Little We Need to Be Happy, remixed by Tatsuya Asuno, and we have The Only Daughter, remixed by Yan Bang and Eric Honor, and Blemish, remixed by Akira Rabelais. So there's quite a few remixes of from the track original album Blemish. Then we get to Nine Horses, Snowborn Sorrow album, which contains the tracks A Wonderful World, Darkness Burns, The Banality of Evil, Atom and Cell, A History of Holes, Snowborn Sorrow, The Day the Earth Stole Heaven, Serotonin, and The Librarian. And this tells you a little bit about each track and the musicians that have performed on this album. We have David Sylvian, Kenneth Lowe, Stina Nodsadan, and David Sylvian again, Steve Jansen, one of Japan artists, Keith Lowe again on that track. Who else do we have performing on this album? There's loads of musicians on there. Rushi Sakamoto also performs on this album, which is fantastic. I'm just seeing if any other ex-Japan artists are on this album. At the moment we've just got Steve Jansen, who seems to have done a lot of the music production, and David's done a lot of lyrical content. There's quite a bit of work in here with Sakamoto, which is really cool. So unfortunately we lost Rishi Sakamoto a couple of years ago, unfortunately. Absolutely amazing, talented guy. There is a box set of his I would like to get. I haven't got yet. I believe it's called Opus. Anyway, let's move on. Let's see if anyone else on here that I can recognise from the original Japan band. Again, it's still just Steve Jansen. Yeah, there is another Nine Horses album, but it's sadly not in this box set. Hayden Christian performs on this one, who I've heard of before. And that seems to be the only sort of artist from Japan in there, Steve Jansen and David Sylvian. And this goes on about a bit more information about the production and the remastering of this album. Then we get on to David Sylvian, Rishi Sakamoto, Nine Horses, Do You Know Me Now, the singles and EP. This contains the track of World Citizen with David Sylvian and Sakamoto, World Citizen, I Won't Disappoint, again with Sylvian Sakamoto. World Citizen, Raji Elder Remix by Sylvian Sakamoto. Money for All, 9 Horses. Get the Hell Out, 9 Horses. The Blandity of the Evil, Bernd Friedman, or the 9 Horses track. Wonderful World, again Bernd Friedman remix of the 9 Horses track. Birds Sing for Their Lives, 9 Horses. Serotonin, Bernd Friedman's remix of the 9 Horses track. Money for All version, 9 Horses. Get the Hell Out, Bernd Friedman, again remix of the 9 Horses track. When Monday Comes Around, 9 Horses. Do You Know Me Now, David Sylvian. And Where Your Gravity by David Sylvian, which this is a part of that replacement disc, which was sent out separately. And this breaks down each individual track, again going through who's actually performing on the tracks, which is great to see. A lot of work on here with Sakamoto, because I do love Sakamoto. He's fantastic. I'd like to apologise, my hands are a bit mucky, guys. I've been out doing some gardening this morning as the sun's out, so I do apologise. You know what I'm like I told you, I don't tend to prep for a video, I just come up and do it. So these again telling you all the details about the different tracks and the remixes and who's performed on them. A lot of them will be on the 9 Horses album with the same musical lineup, as a lot of these are the 9 Horses tracks. Very cool. So next up we have When Loud Weather Buffeted Naoshima. Great album title. Wonderful picture there. All these sort of bees. And that tells you about the album. The actual album doesn't have any tracks titles to it. It is pretty much the title of the the title of the album, and it was come out in 2007, and it doesn't have any titles on the tracks, just an assembly of musicians including David Sylvian. Then we have Manafon, which is a little bit of his follow-up to Blemish. An amazing cover, a great artwork, come out in 2009. Great artwork of David. Shame he's carrying a dead rabbit, but there we go. The tracks on this album are Small Metal Gods, The Rabbit Skinner, Random Acts of Senseless Violence, The Greatness Living Englishman, 125 Spheres, Snow White in is it Appalachia, Emily Dickinson, The Department of Dead Letters, and Manafon. So the next page we will have the details of who's performed on this album. Just seeing again if anyone that we recognise on here, apart from obviously David. David seems to find some quite obscure musicians for his recordings. He does seem attracted to that, which I think is fantastic, because it gives these musicians that probably never heard of a chance to sort of like perform. He's performed with loads of other great musicians, as you know, Sakamoto, Robert Fripp, Mick Kahn, to name but a few. But yeah, I do like that sometimes that I see musicians on here I've never heard of, which is quite good. But there's such an arrangement of songs. He's got such an arrangement of instruments on here, from electric to acoustic guitars to double bass, acoustic bass, cello, laptop, piano, atmospherics, David's very heavily into atmospheric. It's a very ambient sound to David, and sometimes it can be a little distorted and a little bit a few listens to understand what he's trying to accomplish, because sometimes it just seems like random bits of noise sometimes put together, but in a very ambient and very sort of chilled way. These are great albums to relax to. I find David very relaxing, which is fantastic. The last few David albums, this is probably one of the last albums of David using his vocals. Most of the other albums are instrumental, or he brings in actors or poets to read some poems over the top of his sort of like ambient sounds and atmospheres. That's the way his music has gone. From when he first went to his solo career, he was very sort of, you could hear acousticy and jazz influences upon his repertoire, on top of obviously some synthesized music, because he'd come from that kind of background. But in fact, when Japan first started out, they were very much a sort of glam rock punk band, if you like, and then they ventured down the sort of post-punk era with a few sort of semi kind of reggae tracks, and then they discovered electronic music, and then they introduced electronic music, and they introduced world music into their music. Obviously, if you listen to their albums like Tin Drum, it has a very oriental sort of influence upon their music, and I think that's the way they went. And David went down the road of kind of jazz, world music, around that one post Japan, which I fell in love with. I prefer his solo music to Japan. I love Japan's music, it's fantastic, but his solo music is where my heart lays. And some of these albums are some of those albums which are particularly fantastic, especially this one. This is called Died in the War, the Manafon variations. So these are different versions to the tracks of the albums, and these sound stunning. Absolutely amazing album, this one. If you're interested in any of David's latter part of his career and you don't have any, start with this one. I know it's a kind of like a remix album, but it's beautiful. It's a stunning album, and it contains the tracks Small Metal Gods, Died in the War, I Should Not Dare, Random Acts of Senseless Violence, A Certain Slant of Light, an Anomaly of Tall Head, Snow White in here we go again, Appalachia, Emily Dickinson, The Greatest Living Englishman, Anomaly of at the Tall Head, Manafon, and The Last Days of December. It's a fantastic album, guys. Really cool. Once again, we go through all the listings of the musicians and their instruments that we have in here. We have no input mixing board. We have somebody on that. What a strange thing. We have saxophones, we have samples, we have cello treatments, we have cellos, we have a live performance taken from Suki's 7th live performance from 2010, used by kind permission. So it's obviously got a sample in that one. We have string arrangements. So he's actually brought in strings, violins, and all this wonderful arrangements of these tracks. Synthesizers, guitars, trumpets, violins, viola. There's such a wide variety of instruments in David's music, which is what's attracted me to his wonderful music. And this is a great album. Really cool. Then we have When We Return, You Won't Recognize Us. Another one of sort of David's kind of concept albums, and it has the track When We Return, You Won't Recognize This. One track, guys, but it lasts about an hour, and it's really it's beautiful and unsettling as well at times, which is really cool. There's no vocals on here from David at all. Like I said, he resorted away from the vocals. Great artwork in this book, as you can see. Then we have David Sylvian, Jan Bang and Eric Honda's album Unknown Deities. I'm surprised David never went to 4AD Records. But there we go. Obviously he didn't. Okay, so here we have the track listing of this album. The God of a Single Cell Organism, the God of Sleeplessness, the God of Silence, the God of Smaller Gods, the God of Small Caresses, the God of Black Holes, the God Adverbs, the Ruminative Gap, the God of Crossroads, the God of Tiny Islands, the God of Gradual Abdications, and I Swallowed Earth for This. A lot of songs about God. So we have a breakdown of the tracks on this one. We do have David returning on vocals on some of this album, which is pretty cool. Wonderful booklet, isn't it, guys? Really well set out. So we're going to come to disc 10. There's a light enters houses with no other house in sight, which is another concept album featuring Franz Wright and Christian Fernez. David doesn't do any vocals on this album. There's the artwork, and again it's one track, but again it lasts over an hour. It has Franz Wright with spoken word, Christian Franz on guitar and laptop, David Sylvian on piano, sampling, laptop and electronics, and John Tilbury on additional piano. So that is the work on that, and these I think it's like works or poems written by Franz Wright, and David produced music and he's reading his poems over the top of it. It's really quite haunting. It's an amazing album, and he just released one not so long ago. Unfortunately it's not in this box set, and it has a couple of spaceman arms on it. I do have it, and it's in my other room. I can't remember what it's called. It's very atmospheric. It's no vocals on it, it's just atmospheric noises, and it's really cool. Really like it. It's in my other room, in my bedroom, because I play it at night when I'm trying to sleep. But yeah, unfortunately it's not on this album, this box set. And there we go, and that is all the information and stuff that's in the booklet of this David Sylvian box set. Do you know me now? So we're going to return the items into the box. Here's all the discs. So it's 10 albums in here. I'm not sure if this is still in print. It wasn't cheap. I think it was about £150. So it's not a cheap box set. But if you look at some of David's CDs, they are expensive to buy on their own. And sometimes if you want to collect all of his works in one go, this could be the way forward. But that is a close look at David Sylvian's box set from 2003 to 2014. Do you know me now? So there we are. There's a closer look at that David Sylvian's wonderful box set. And like I said, I apologise, I've got a bit dirty hands. I've been out this Sunday and I'm on a day off. So I've been out doing a bit of gardening because the sun's out today. So I thought, well, let's get out there, because soon I won't be able to get out there because of the weather. So I'm so sorry. But anyway, yeah, and I was saying there's a few entries in this box set which I was surprised not to be in there. And the albums I was talking about was Wonder Mood, which is this release here, which I was surprised it wasn't actually in that set. But I think that set came out before this got a release, although this album, when it got released, had been out a while. This is David Sylvian with Let me get my glasses on. I think his name's Stephen. Yeah, Stephen Matthew, I believe. And this came out, and it's a great little album. So I'm surprised that's not in there, and I'm surprised that the other Nine Horses album didn't cut in there either, which I was surprised about. But there you go. Let's have a look at this one. Yeah, Money for All, it's called. Yeah, this actually is just like an extended kind of EP, I think. No, it's 8 tracks. It is a full album, 8 tracks. Okay. Yeah, surprised that wasn't on there. I'm trying to see if there's any variations in musicians on this one, but that one wasn't in there. Also surprised that these didn't make the cut either. Appreciation Silence, which is like another sort of instrumental album of David's, and I'm surprised that didn't make it either. And the compilation album of Camphia, I'm surprised that didn't also get onto the box set, which would have been nice. But like I said, that seemed to cover, but these were probably on a completely separate label, and I think these would have been on the box set that maybe have come to cover that middle part of his career, which would have had the Nine Horses album, Dead Bees on the Cake, the Raintree Crow stuff he's done, and the Robert Fripp stuff he'd done. It would be really cool if we had a box set containing those albums. But we have the Weather box with the first part, and we have this one with the latter part. We don't have a Japan box set, which would be really nice too. And it would be really nice if they sort of picked up on that middle part of his career, probably from the later 90s to the 2003 part of his career. But unfortunately, we don't have any of that, and that's a real shame. But it is definitely worth delving into David's career. You probably all, if you're not a David Sylvian fan, you will know him from the 80s synth band, new wave band called Japan, where they had a few hit singles, Cantonese Boy, Visions of China, and Quiet Life, and all those wonderful sort of singles. But Japan are one of those bands that their hidden beauty is within their non-singles, their album tracks. They're one of those sort of bands, a little bit like Talk Talk, who had some great big hits, massive hits, but in their album tracks were sublime. And I find that same with Japan. Then David Sylvian progressed on, like I said, to his sort of his own musical tastes, I would say, because he went to sort of very world music sort of sounding, with sort of experimentation with atmospheres and also jazz, sort of like trumpets and things like that, giving it a very jazzy feel, especially on albums like Brilliant Trees and Secrets of the Beehive. They have a very strong sort of thing, where then he went to very ambient albums with Alchemy and Gone to Earth. They had like very ambient tracks on there. And then he went to his experimental period after his sort of Dead Bees on the Cake and all those wonderful, wonderful albums, which again, Dead Bees on the Cake is probably one of my favourite David Sylvian albums, and it really needs a proper remastering and another look at. I would love, I'll tell you what I would really love with David Sylvian is Stephen Wilson to get his hands on his works and start remastering and doing sort of like up-to-date remasters of his works, because I'm sure Stephen is a fan probably of David Sylvian because of David's collected sort of musical sounds and influences. I'm sure he likes that, and it would be great for him to pick up on that. Anyway, that's a look at that David Sylvian box set. I will go through some more box sets in the future. I'm looking at doing some Beatles stuff soon, and some John Lennon stuff soon. I want to also go through some Stephen Wilson's remixes of some Ultravox albums, and also I might have a look at some heavier rock that I don't tend to really cover much on my channel, maybe some Motorhead or something like that. I think I've got an unboxing coming soon of Motorhead, as I've ordered a Motorhead box set what I've been after for a little while. There is another one that I've got an eye on too. But anyway, look after yourselves guys, and I hope you've enjoyed this video.